You are listening to the IndyCar Report with Elijah Poe, starting next week and throughout the season, every Thursday on the Central Indiana Sports Report. Welcome, IndyCar fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report for this week's IndyCar Report. In fact, Elijah, the final IndyCar Report before the week of a race, which is next week with St. Petersburg. Today, we'll talk a little action on the track and talk a little bit about what's going on off the track. But let's start with today's testing at Phoenix. Elijah, I haven't even seen any results. I saw yesterday's, and apparently Penske had a really good day. What happened today?
Yeah, well, Penske is very good today, but I think this might surprise you, being this driver is number one. Alexander Rossi ran the fastest time with the average lap speed of 174.444, which is 2 miles an hour quicker than Newgarden ran yesterday, with Newgarden coming in second place with 174.362. And then the last driver in 174 being none other than the greatest racer in IndyCar right now, being Alex Poe with 174 points. It's a 20-second lap time around Phoenix. I cannot wait to see the race at Phoenix. Just the fact that they're also pairing this event with NASCAR. I think a lot of these NASCAR fans are going to see these IndyCars on track on Saturday and be blown away, because we're talking about a 50-mile-an-hour difference on lap average from NASCAR to IndyCar, or roughly around there.
Alexander Rossi, that's big.
Yeah, it is. He did it on his fifth lap out there, ran 58 laps, not the most by far, with Will Power running 105 laps. But I think we talked about ECR a little bit before we really got underway with testing. Rossi and Christian Rasmussen were very big on what they could do for this season, with some funding really coming into cycle for Ed Carpenter Racing this year. I think it would be pretty great to see them compete on the ovals for sure, where they've had it, but it would be really cool to see them have a successful year.
I think it'd be really good for the sport. I think it'd be particularly good for Ed Carpenter fans to see them more competitive. Rossi too, just not very competitive the last couple of years. I kind of mocked him on the last podcast. I was like, yeah, we'll see. I still feel that way. I still feel like they're at best second-rate team. But this is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't feel like you're wrong. I would maybe even say, I wouldn't say Meyer Shank is a second-rate team anymore. I would say Ed Carpenter is kind of that breaking that second-ranked team barrier. But it would be very cool to see Ed Carpenter be competitive. You talk about Rossi, and I think something with him is it's such a shame, but also it's really cool that he won his first ever 500 as a rookie, because it's kind of hard to set the bar that extremely high with the success he had his rookie season. But you were right. These last few years he has been kind of in the background, hasn't really been super competitive. Had a good few races with McLaren before he left for Ed Carpenter, and it'd be great to have him back in the competitive zone in IndyCar.
Well, he won one, and then he almost won another one a couple of years later that Simon Pagenaud ended up winning. Since then, I think there was another year he was pretty competitive, maybe at Indy at least. It may be in his final year with McLaren. But, man, it's been, if you're an Alexander Rossi fan, you've been watching a lot of mid-pack finishes.
You're not wrong, especially just being the name he is. He's obviously very, very highly touted after his rookie season, and has kind of had some slip-ups here in these past years, but running a 174 with I can't believe the lap times. The slowest lap time today was 22 seconds. That is quick. With the slowest lap, it was from Santino, which we could talk about AJ Foyt as well. From both days from testing, they look pretty slow.
Yeah, no doubt. talking about second-rate teams trying to become a first-rate team. And by the way, I'm saying second-rate not as an insult. I'm saying it's not Penske, Ganassi, or Andretti, basically, is what I'm saying by second-rate team. So I don't want everybody to think that I'm trying to insult these teams. I'm not. They're just not one of the top three teams. But any of those teams, not Penske, Ganassi, or Andretti right now struggling is a really bad sign.
Which is a shame, especially for AJ Foyt. We talked about them so much last year with Santino Ferrucci and David Malukas, having some very strong races last year. They were always competitive around Indy, super competitive on some of the ovals. But, day one, Santino was in 22nd and Kyle Collette was in 25th. And day two, Santino was dead last and Kyle Collette was second to last. And they didn't run a whole bunch of laps really on either day, which is concerning. They do have a Penske alignment or a partnership, but it would be a shame to see AJ Foyt kind of regress back after having a pretty solid year last year.
If Malukas had left and this is happening, maybe he was the reason that Foyt was having success, but Ferrucci was just as good as Malukas last year. Him struggling too might be a bad sign.
Yeah, it might be, but the thing with testing, even though it's nice that we're looking at the numbers and it is nice that, we really don't know. It is testing at the end of the day. But with it being on an oval is a tad more concerning because, these teams they're racing in Phoenix in just a couple weekends. So this is some pretty big data points. And to see them kind of really not hit the mark, maybe they can learn something about the car and fix it for when they do race in Phoenix in a couple weekends. But being that far down and that far off the pace is concerning for sure.
We talked about it a little bit earlier, just touched on it just a second, Elijah, but this is, again, just testing. But for Penske, has to be a bit of a relief. Not that they weren't at the top of the speed charts a lot last year, but there were a lot of times they weren't. So it has to be a bit of a relief, but just a small step.
Yeah, I think you're right. With the year they had last year, I think they would take any swing of momentum they can get and kind of turn it into a positive. I was not shocked to see Joseph Newgarden in the top two for both days. I mean, this is a race he won the last time IndyCar raced at Phoenix, and I mean, everybody knows that Newgarden is arguably probably the best on ovals, and that's a huge statement, but that statement is probably true. And it's nice to see David Malukas kind of top the charts on day one. I know there's been a lot of conversations on if he was ready to move to Penske, but, cementing himself. I mean, like I said, this is testing, but to be coming out of the blocks running for Team Penske is definitely a positive that, they didn't really have last year. They didn't really have anything positive happen to them last year.
And you mentioned this is an oval. The first race, of course, is on a road course, so take that for what it's worth. But Elijah, you and I are going to do our official predictions podcast next week, so don't want to go too far into that today. Since the last time you and I had a podcast, we had heard that Romaine Grosjeans was going to be a full-time driver this year, and it's been officially announced, and in fact, he participated in this test as well, right?
Yeah, Dale Coyne Racing has officially came out and said Grosjean's going to be in the number 18 for this whole year. It's going to be interesting to see him coming back to IndyCar. He obviously started his IndyCar career with Dale Coyne before he made the switch to Andretti. But being him back in IndyCar is just big for the sport in general. Having another previous Formula One driver back is definitely going to turn some heads. And even though he was a kind of divisive guy, I think a lot of people either really, really like him or you really hate him. Regardless, it is going to be good for the sport just to get another big name. Now we have, 3 Formula One drivers in Marcus Ericsson, Mick Schumacher, and Romaine Grosjean. So it's definitely cool for the sport to have.
Elijah, a couple of years ago when he was driving in the sport, I used to say when there were 24 cars, I liked 23 of them. That's how much I do not like Grosjean. And he always seemed to be into something with one of my favorite drivers. He always seemed to be into something with somebody, didn't he?
I know him and Santino Ferrucci had their bouts, especially I think it was the Indy GP that year when they crashed in the warm up before the race, which is just, I mean,
That's right.
could you think of a stupider thing to do for both of those drivers? But it'd be
Speaking of
interesting to see.
Rossi, Grosjean and Rossi, not fans of each other.
I don't know.
We're more than two. I'll tell you that.
It's going to be interesting to see what he can do at Dale Coyne. We saw Rinus VeeKay have some really good results, a few podiums even with Dale Coyne last year, and he's going to be in that same 18 car that VeeKay was in, and he's going to be right alongside a rookie and Dennis Hauger as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. That's a team that doesn't have a whole lot of funding. We talk about the second-rate teams. It might sound mean, but Dale Coyne Racing is a third-rate team. It's just fair to say, they just don't have the funding like these other teams do. But should be fun to see what they're going to do this year. They definitely have a really interesting driver lineup.
And as I mentioned, our final week without a race. And next week, we're going to have our official season preview podcast. And we will also preview the race in St. Petersburg later in the week. But for now, just want to get a couple of quick predictions from you, Elijah. Number one, your prediction about how the 2026 season is going to go. Is it going to be a memorable one, or is last year going to be tough to top?
I think it's going to be a way bigger year for IndyCar as a whole, just numbers wise. You just think about Phoenix, the fact that they're pairing this up with Xfinity and NASCAR to like have a combined weekend is so great for IndyCar because we've seen how fast these IndyCars are on this oval. I would be damned if I see a NASCAR fan go and say, that isn't awesome. I'm going to tune into that next time because it's going to be a really, really, really good show. And these cars are absolutely flying. I mean, 20-second lap times around Phoenix are crazy. And you just look at the calendar as a whole, 6 ovals, six road courses and 6 street courses. It's a really good year for the calendar. And even though DC, where there's still a lot up in the air, just the fact that they're going to be able to run at DC and the 500 is going to be just as big as it always is. I know early predictions have come out that they're surpassing the grandstand ticket total than last year, which last year's race was sold out. So on pace for another sellout, which is great. I feel like there's a lot of up right now for IndyCar. I think all that needs to happen is cars get on track and we actually see the thing.
Yeah, I kind of set you up for that one because it's one of the highest anticipated seasons I can remember in a long time. Last year was so good, as we mentioned. I think you had pretty much A races across the board with just very few exceptions. Every week was intriguing. So I kind of, tossed the ball up there for you to hit that one. So I
And
think
it's
it's going to be a great year.
And it's crazy that last year was so good because Alex Palou just freaking killed everybody for the whole season. So just to think, like, with how great the racing was last year, I couldn't imagine what we would have been talking about and anticipating if it did come down to the final race of the season. I'm hoping it doesn't happen again, but man, somebody's got to beat Palou, and I think everybody in the paddock knows it.
People say how he ran away with the championship. It made it less entertaining or fascinating. I just didn't see it that way. I thought race to race, it was good. Yeah, there was no intrigue in the championship run, but every week to have that target of Alex Palou, every week was just a great story unto itself. I'm embarrassed because I take a lot of pride in being able to just talk about sports and not worrying about what I think people think of me. But all I do is praise IndyCar, and it sounds like all I am is a cheerleader, and that's just not the case. It wasn't that long ago I'd have been here talking about how things needed to change, and we're just in a really good era right now.
I think you hit it on the head that, we are just in a great time to be a motorsport fan. We've got so many different forms of media, whether that be social media or the podcast we're doing here. So many things are just kind of propagating the sport as a whole. And I really think this Fox partnership has knocked it out of the park. And I cannot wait to see what they're going to do for being their second season in. It's going to be super cool to watch. And just hope, we talk about the ratings sometimes and they don't really matter. But at the end of the day, they matter to people who are investing in this sport. They matter to all the sponsors, they matter to the team, they matter to Fox. And so I am going to be super interested to be able to watch that those numbers either grow or rise as the season starts to kick off here.
Have you spent any time watching the Olympics, Elijah?
A decent amount, not a whole bunch, but yeah.
The drones are very noticeable
Oh yeah.
in these Olympics, and I think they're probably going to start being noticeable in IndyCar too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I know they did that a bunch. I think it wasn't the Milwaukee Mile because I don't think they could do it on ovals, but I think they did it at Road America, and I think they did a few for testing as well. Which that's if they're not doing it, I'd be shocked to see them not do it this year.
Yeah, I saw it a few times last year, but not very much, and it was minor. But they're just right now the drones are just following along with the athletes, and you're probably going to see that with the cars as well pretty soon.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Awesome. I'm sure there's rules and restrictions. They can't fly overhead or anything, but honestly, if they get the shot and they're not in anybody's way, I would love to see that because that would just add a viewing experience that isn't really seen really anywhere in motorsport. You know, we have Formula One, but all their cameras are usually stationary. That's just really good camera work by Formula One to make them look like they're absolutely hauling. Uh, but what a moment for Fox Sports to maybe jump on this moment and kind of grow the brand.
Also, driver's eye cameras. We saw a little bit of that last year. I think we're going to see more of that. And man, is that a cool view.
Oh, yeah. Especially, I can't wait to see him. I don't think they were in the car for week 1 at St. Pete, but I would love to see just how close those concrete barriers are at St. Pete. I'm sure that's going to be an awesome view.
All right, Elijah, thank you so much for joining me. Big week next week. We're going to do our season preview, get all of our IndyCar people into one room and talk it out, talk about who's going to win, who are going to be the surprises, who maybe we think is going to struggle this year, the races we're most looking forward to, things like that. But for now, as we go, Elijah, who's a sleeper to look out for?
Put me on the spot here. I'm going to say it just because I think it's interesting to watch and for how much they talked it up preseason, and now we've got a couple testing dates under our belt. And we even talked about them today. I really think Rossi with ECR, I think that could be really cool to see them kind of resurrect that program and honestly resurrect his career. Would be super, super fun to watch, and would be something I don't think a lot of people have even really put the time into something that could be a possibility. I think it would just be really cool and really unique for that to be a possibility.
One of the best things about the series right now is there aren't a lot of answers that are possible to that question because pretty much every team, every car, right at this point is competitive. So
yeah,
don't look at a lot of them and see them as dark horses anymore.
Yeah, you got a good point. I couldn't have said Pato O'Ward. I can't say David Malukas. Kyle Kirkwood, maybe, but he's still with Andretti, so you can't really say that. But the parity of the drivers this year is incredible, and I'm super interested to see how it's going to play out as a whole. You know, you also talk about Mick Schumacher, him being a rookie in IndyCar. I feel like that's kind of been almost undershadowed, and I bet they'll upplay it, you know, the closer we get to the season. But there's just a lot of storylines and a lot of really good drivers in this series.
Elijah, big year for Graham Rahal.
Yes, it is. Needs to deliver.
Graham might be my favorite. Really big year for him. I hope for big things for him and the team. Again, next week, our big IndyCar season preview, which Elijah will be back, and we hope to have some others with us to make some predictions and talk about our favorite drivers and races that we're looking forward to. Thanks so much for listening. Sorry if I sounded a little sleepy there, but Elijah definitely picked up the slack. He's the best. Please do us a huge favor and share this podcast with an IndyCar fan in your life and help us spread the word that the Central Indiana Sports Report is talking about what Central Indiana sports fans are talking about every single day. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.